It's Wednesday on Daily Delivery. I'm Michael Rand. Glad to be back for another day, and what a day it is. I don't know if you guys missed it. Wolves beat the Warriors last night. We're going to be spending some time on that here in just a minute. A fracas at the beginning of the game, ejections, a hard-fought win, 7 in a row now for the Timberwolves. And like I said, we'll be getting to that here in just a moment. Got some Vikings thoughts at the end of the show as well, in addition to some Twins stuff, kind of setting up a big day, a little bit of Twins news, and we'll definitely have more Twins talk on Thursday with a bankruptcy hearing today involving Diamond Sports, and some of the future of the Twins on TV may be getting a little bit more clarified after today. Randy Johnson from the Star Tribune will join me here in a little while as well to talk about Gopher football. Not a great stretch for Gopher football by any stretch of the imagination. Lost to Purdue 49-30 this weekend, gave up over 600 yards. They're now tied in the standings with a bunch of other teams they would prefer not to be tied with. Iowa is more or less the runaway winner now with the Big Ten West. They have a 2-game lead on everybody with 2 games to play. One more Iowa win gives them the title outright and another spot in that Big Ten title game. But just where do the Gophers go from here? This was supposed to be, at worst, maybe a bridge year, and it doesn't feel like a bridge year right now. It feels like a kind of a journey to the unknown at this point, with the depth of this team being tested, and with them struggling in a mediocre at best conference. So Randy and I'll get into all that and set up this weekend's Ohio State game. Does not get any easier. Understatement of the century with that one. First, though, what did I miss? Like I said at the jump, Timberwolves 104-101 win over the Warriors. And if you just looked at the box score in the morning, you might be like, well, why did Jaden McDaniels play only 2 minutes? Why did Draymond Green and Klay Thompson only play 2 minutes for the Warriors? Because they got ejected before any points were even scored in this game. I believe I saw something on X last night, Twitter formerly, that this was the first game in NBA history since the ABA-NBA merger that 3 starters were ejected from a game before a single point was scored. Started with a tussle between McDaniels and Klay Thompson and evolved into Draymond Green putting Rudy Gobert in a chokehold, essentially. He got ejected. The 2 main participants in the initial dust-up got ejected. Rudy Gobert called it clown behavior. We'll get into that in a little bit. To me, it was a washed-up team. The Warriors are washed up. They used to be great. They had a dynasty. They won the title as recently as a couple years ago. Nobody is good anymore on that team except for Steph Curry, who wasn't playing because of right knee soreness in this game. So they're trying to find someone else who might be able to score a basket. I think coming into this game, they had one person. I think Dario Saric had scored over 20 points in addition to Steph Curry in any game this year. Nobody else had even topped 20 points. So the Warriors are trying to find something else aside from Steph Curry to get themselves going. And I guess they decided that the way they were going to do that was to try to fight the Timberwolves, to try to resort to cheap shot, slap shot type tactics to try to beat them because they're washed up, because they're just not very good anymore, because they botched at least 2 drafts. James Wiseman, what a terrible pick that was. He was number 2 pick overall after Anthony Edwards in 2020. They could have had LaMelo Ball. They could have had any number of players that could have extended that dynasty. Instead, they took James Wiseman and had to finally offload him this past year in a 4-team trade for basically nothing. Bench help, rotational players, nothing of real value. They got Jonathan Kuminga with the number 7 pick that they got from the Wolves in the D'Angelo Russell trade. He's okay, but he's not special. Moses Moody, the number 14 pick that year, he's fine, but he's not special. Like, none of these guys have really stepped to the forefront to extend the dynasty. So they got to be frustrated. They got to be like, man, we are wasting the final good years of Steph Curry, who's still playing at an amazing level, is still a top 5 player in this league, still is a great, great player. Draymond Green not even close to the player he used to be. Klay Thompson looks like he's not close to the player he used to be. They're frustrated. So they resort to this, and so you create this environment where the Warriors aren't playing with what in the past has been their big 3. Really, it's their big 1 now, but what in the past has been their big 3? The guys you have to pay attention to: Curry, Green, and Thompson are all out of the game after 2 minutes. Advantage Wolves, right? All they're missing is Jaden McDaniels, which is a big miss, but still, if you're looking at it, you got to think the Wolves are at an advantage. But it plays out like a game where all of a sudden the Warriors have a bunch of energy. And you see this sometimes in various sports. A fight in hockey ignites a team. A relief, a backup quarterback comes into the game in the NFL, like Josh Dobbs, and the team rallies behind him. Ejections happen in the NBA. Say a coach gets ejected sometimes, and players get fired up. They go on to do good things. Now, the Warriors had a lot of energy. There was a lot of energy in the building because of that initial fight, those initial ejections, and the Warriors were playing pretty well. We're kind of setting the tone for a while. A lot of their reserves, a lot of their lesser players were doing big things, and they had like a 10-point lead on the Wolves in the third quarter. Was not looking good. So for the Wolves to be able to chip away at that lead, get it down to basically tied early in the fourth quarter, and then stay there and then pull away, make those plays at the end of the game. Karl-Anthony Towns, huge basket, go-ahead three late in the game. Rudy Gobert, huge block on Dario Saric in the corner, gives the Wolves another possession, keeps them in the lead. Anthony Edwards gets the rebound off that, basically takes all 5 Warriors with him. He dribbles into the paint, finds Mike Conley Jr. wide open in the corner, hits him. Conley makes it, three-pointer, ball game, and that was the story of that game. That was how it all basically wrapped up towards the end there. It was a lot of different guys, a lot of different players making those plays. And let's hear Mike Conley Jr. right now. I want to play a quote from him from after the game, kind of describing how that all played out.
Honestly, it was we just had to grind out this win. Like, it was nothing in particular. It was, getting a loose ball here or there, offensive rebound, a deflection, a block, a big block at, Rudy had at the end in the corner. Guys making extra passes, hands pass at the end of the game. Just wasn't one particular thing, but it was just us finding a way in a night that was, pretty hectic.
Conley's calming presence and his ability still cannot be overstated as far as their impact on this team. They've won 7 in a row now. They're 7 in a row, 8-2 on the season, 7 wins in a row, including all 3 of this road trip so far. He has calmed them down so many different times this year already, has made big shot after big shot, got them into the right situation. The Mike Conley Jr. effect cannot be overstated right now, nor, I should point out, can the impact of good and great Karl-Anthony Towns on this team. 33 points, 11 rebounds, ever since that Boston game where I, kind of mused about, man, how can they be this good when Towns is this bad? He has been very good. He has been very good for this team. He takes them to another level when he is playing at this level. I want to see it for more than just a few games, but I also am saying, wow, when he plays at this level, they have a much higher ceiling than they otherwise do. They can be okay. They can be pretty good when Towns is not playing at his peak, but when Towns is much closer to his peak, as he was in this Tuesday game, leading the team in scoring 33 points, playing good defense, grabbing rebounds, they are a dangerous team. They look like a top 4 team in the West when Karl-Anthony Towns is playing like that. Same with Gobert. Like I said, he had that block, struggled a little bit with his shot in this game, but he had a bunch of rebounds, had 3 key blocks in this game. He is looking like a completely different player this season, as we've talked about already. The bench gave them plenty. It was probably the best Shake Milton game in quite some time, maybe even all year. They got some big contributions from Kyle Anderson as usual. And, just this team kind of gets different things on different nights. They don't have to rely on 1 or 2 things all the time. And that's, of course, the mark of a good team. Now, it doesn't get any easier back-to-back, right? They're in Phoenix tonight. They're already 3-0 on this road trip, but heading into that, they were just playing an emotional late game. A bunch of guys poured a bunch of energy in it. Towns played 42 minutes. They were scrambling all over the court, but they decided to go for it in this game. Sometimes you have to make a choice. The art of the back-to-back is sometimes when you're playing 2 good teams, and the Warriors still qualify as a good team, even if they're washed up. When you're playing 2 good teams, you have to decide where you're going to put your energy. When they knew Curry was out, you probably had to think, okay, if we're going to put our energy into one game where we think we have the best chance to win, this is it. And then as the game unfolds, they're in trouble, right? They're down, but they still pour that energy in because they know they're the better team on that night. They know they have the better players. They know that if they keep with it, they can win that game. So they distribute the minutes such that they can get that win in that game and worry about Phoenix tonight. That is the art of the back-to-back. That is the art of, sometimes you're going to take a schedule loss. Tonight might be a schedule loss. I'll be interested to see how they deploy players, how much rest they give guys, things like that. Conley only played 31 minutes. They were able to manage his minutes pretty well in this game, so he probably should be okay. I'm sure Ant will be up for it. Jaden McDaniels very well rested after playing just 2 minutes, but guys like Towns, Gobert, I wonder if they have to deploy their bigs a little bit differently in that Phoenix game if they're going to try to stay competitive, because I believe Phoenix has Beal, Booker, and Durant all available for that game, if I'm not mistaken. So that will be a real test in Phoenix to see if they can keep their 7-game winning streak going. Now, you guys had a bunch of feedback, a bunch of stuff I asked for stuff on X, formerly Twitter, after the game, asked for your thoughts. Let's run through some of that, even if there is some overlap in what I just said. Adam Nelson says, nice hustle play by Ant to get the defensive rebound with about 2:40 to go in the game. One of several things they did right to take this win. Good point, because those are the little plays they didn't make enough in the last couple years, even as they were winning enough games to get in the playoffs. That's a sign of a mature team. That's some of the Conley influence, I think, some of Gobert playing better, some of just these guys being a year older, a year more mature. But yes, those little winning plays like Conley talked about a little while ago, those are the things that you need to win games like this, and they certainly did that in this game. Let's see. Yeah, T. Gage Murphy, he's a neighbor of mine, says Conley's calmness will add about 5 more wins to the team this year. I agree. I think he's a good fit for them right now, and you can't, like I said, you can't overstate how much he means to them. He said, Stephen Baker says, winning the games they should, a new Timberwolves. Yeah, I've already kind of addressed that, but absolutely. Johnny says, how many previous Wolves teams get that win? Not many. I agree. You get into a situation against a bunch of backups, you get into a game where it's getting chippy, things like that. That's where you need both calmness and toughness, and they have not had enough of that in past years. Josiah says, this is why Cat is more valuable to this team than the current market rate. The ceiling for this team is the highest with him on the roster. I can agree with that if I see it going this way for another half a season, not just a few games. But I agree, Cat is playing at a very high level right now, and when he is playing at this level, you're right, the ceiling is highest for this team when he is playing like this and is on this team. David E. Preston says, Ant using his gravity to get Conley the 3 has been my favorite point of the season so far, unlocking a new level in clutch time. Yes, instead of just hero ball, dribble, shoot the 3 contested, he finds Conley wide open, ball game. Mr. Inconsistency says, fire Draymond into the sun. Rudy Gobert would agree. He called the chokehold clown behavior, and Chris Hine did a great piece on this after the game, kind of setting the stage for what happened when Draymond Green had punched Jordan Poole in the preseason last year. Gobert tweeted, insecurity is always loud. When Gobert took a swing at Kyle Anderson right before the playoffs last year, Green had the same tweet. So these guys have had something going for a little while. So there was no real reason aside from frustration, pent up angst, and just Draymond being Draymond that he would do that. Gobert had some good stuff after the game, though. He says he's called it clown behavior. He said every time Steph doesn't play, he doesn't want to play, and he said, clown behavior, and I'm proud of myself for being the bigger man again and again. And yeah, Green doesn't even deserve me putting my hands on him. My team needed me tonight. I did whatever I could to keep my cool and then show I wasn't making the situation worse. And I do hope that the league is going to do what they needs to be done, because that's just clown behavior. Not much to say. It's clown behavior. And he said it wasn't good enough of a choke for me to sleep, so I just kept my hands up and waited until it was over. something tells me this isn't over. Something tells me there will be some more chapters to this. Hey, the Wolves could use a good rivalry. They could use being in the mix. You have to be good enough to be in a rivalry. I think the Wolves certainly are. I don't know if the Warriors are anymore, but this could be fun the next time they play. Certainly was fun in this case. And Gobert was right. It takes a certain maturity to keep your cool, to win a game like that, especially on the road. Here was Conley again talking about that.
I thought we did a good job of battling, just ourselves. Our mental was, guys were angry at refs. Guys were a little bit flustered and, frustrated with things, and trying to keep everybody's, mental down a little bit, not trying to get too aggressive. And I thought that as the game went on, we settled into it a little bit more. There was a time we were down 10, 11 points, and looked up there, and guys just kind of slowly just chipped away and said, hey, let's just continue to trust each other and do this together. We're not going to do it one guy at a time. So I'm just proud that we were able to mentally overcome that start and the way that they were playing against us.
Final thoughts here. It's just game 10 of an 82-game season, and let's not get carried away, but the Wolves have already won a bunch of games this year that I don't feel like they have won in past years, and a bunch of them now have been in a row. Tells me that something's different. I don't know how different. I don't know exactly how and what is going to be sustained, but if this team stays healthy, they do look like a very good team right now, and I think a lot of people are getting excited about it, and for good reason.
Grand Casino would like to take a moment and salute the true football fan. The passion, the hope, the anticipation, that incomparable feeling of winning. Grand Casino would also like to take a moment to remind you that you can find all that anticipation, thrill, and winning at Grand Casino. Grand Casino, let your story begin.
Let's talk Gopher football with Randy Johnson, beat writer for the Gophers. Randy didn't give up a single one of the 603 yards of total offense that Purdue got on the Gophers, 49-30. Win for the Boilermakers against the Gophers. I mean, that was, I don't know what else you say about that one, Randy, but any talk about, backdoor Big Ten West title, even after that Illinois loss, all of that goes out the window pretty fast as they just couldn't stop, had no answer for a team that wasn't really rolling offensively going into the game.
It was just came out of nowhere. Well, and it when in pregame warmups, when you see Cody Lindenberg not really participating in there, and he's questionable. This is questionable, and it's like, okay, this could be a problem. And then the guy starting in place of him, Maverick Baranowski, goes down in the first series. It's like, oh, they don't have anybody there in the middle with any experience. They're playing a true freshman and a redshirt freshman in there who had not played at all in any meaningful snaps. So that caused a big problem there. They were also without safety Aiden Gooseby. That didn't help. He's somebody who has seen quite a bit of playing time. And then just nobody tackled. Nobody, so many bad run fits where they're out of position. It just steamrolled on them. It was nuts.
Help me out now. And we always hear in football and other sports, kind of next man up. We've heard that from the Vikings a lot this year, where they've had some injuries and they've had guys step in. Obviously, Joshua Dobbs, probably the most notable, but they're 5-0 without Justin Jefferson, for example. That's professional football. That's, smaller rosters, obviously probably guys who are a little bit more closely aligned in skill level, things like that. But at the college level, is it common? Would it be common for, one or two guys to go out and then just the depth is just completely not there? That was the thing I was having a hard time understanding I get that an injury has an impact, but that has such an outsized impact that all of a sudden the team gets 600 yards on you.
Well, what happened too is a lot of the Gophers' depth that they would have had this year transferred out.
Okay.
You had guys like Braylon Oliver, like that probably either would have been top reserves or possibly even a starter. They haven't gotten probably as much as they've wanted out of the Western Michigan transfer and Ryan Seelig. There's areas where if they had a lot of injuries, it was going to be a problem, and linebacker was one of them. Running back's another one of them.
Yeah, and it shows in that game. PJ Fleck uses the word unacceptable a lot, which is, a good word to use when you give up that many yards. Joe Rossi's defenses have tended to be awfully good. Like that was the surprise to me that they could have this sort of kind of let down so many blown assignments, so many missed tackles when you're used to seeing Joe Rossi's defenses play much differently.
Yeah, Joe had prided himself on or putting together defense that was last couple of years have been very, very good against explosive plays, limiting them. This year, not the case. The people are gashing them up and down the field, and the other spot where they're really it's really tough for them is their third down. Last year they were sixth nationally in third down defense.
Yeah.
This year, Chip Scoggins points out they're 115th.
Ooh.
So
That's pretty close to the bottom, right? Was it 120, 130 teams? Yeah.
132, yeah.
So that's huge. I mean, that's what football is all about these days, is getting off the field on third down. It's so much. It used to be more of a field position game. Now it's a possession game. You got to be able to get off the field and even eliminate the chance that a team might be tempted to go for it. Like, you've got to really button a team down. And yeah, some of that's just probably like year to year, variance, right? But do we have a particular explanation for why that's so much different this year versus last year?
Not necessarily off the top of my head. It's just they just haven't always played well in those key set spots. They have a better pass rush this year, but it's there's times where it hasn't come through and where they needed it. But to me, it's more on the coverage end of it.
So where do they go from here? I mean, if you are trying to extract any positives out of that game, you're not going to find any on defense. Maybe you can pull a couple on offense. I mean, Ethan Kaliakmanis was inconsistent again, but they scored 30 points. Like, the offense is not the problem in this game. Are you seeing things there that make you think, okay, if we're kind of more in evaluation mode right now, and we'll talk about Ohio State here in a minute, like, you're going to learn some things there, but you're probably also going to learn that you're, two steps below in class too, since you're 27.5 point underdogs there. But like, as you look at the offense and start to think about 2024 and beyond, what do you think they're learning about quarterback, running back, everything like that so far?
Well, I think with Ethan, you've seen him improve as the season gone on, but there still is a lot of inconsistency. He's thrown for 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games and no interception. That's good. He's started pretty strong in both games. That's good. But then the second half, he's tailed off, especially in the Illinois game. And not quite as much in the Purdue game, but still, not nearly as good a stats as he had in the first half. Him getting more consistent is going to be the key with this program going forward. It'll help too if they didn't have so many drop passes. They've played with that all season with the receivers. It's it's hurt them at some very drop passes in the end zone, drop third down passes. Those are when the quarterback's has accuracy issues as to begin with. You gotta have your receivers catching the ball. You mentioned Illinois. Hey, they got Paddock going in that relief effort. He threw for 500 yards this week after blitzing the Gophers for that 85-yard quick strike drive to beat him the other week. Yeah, that's I was kind of like, well, okay, maybe there isn't a one-hit wonder here. There's something there to this guy. Gophers will have all they can handle and then some this weekend at Ohio State. I already mentioned the 4 touchdown underdogs. Essentially, it feels like a name your score game. What do you want to see if you're PJ Fleck and the Gophers out of this game, where basically nobody's giving you a chance to win, but you also need to start feeling better about yourself in some way if you're going to have any kind of momentum going into that season ender against Wisconsin, which could by all accounts be for not just bragging rights but bowl eligibility. What do you want to see this weekend if you're PJ Fleck? Well, you want to see who's healthy first. Do you get a guy like Darius Taylor back? That would help immensely in the running game. But if he's still banged up, you don't want to play him against Ohio State. Just you want a solid effort. You want, I think everybody realizes it's the chances of an upset are pretty slim the way the Gophers are playing right now, and especially on defense. And it's just get out of there with with a solid effort, with something that shows you haven't rolled over, and hopefully too, with get out of there in a relatively good health. Don't suffer any other injuries that that's hurt them this season, and it's you really can't afford any more with if you want to win that last game against Wisconsin.
That Wisconsin game is really their realistic chance to win. I mean, something can always happen: turnovers, big plays, things like that. You could be competitive and potentially hang with Ohio State, but if you've just lost to Illinois and Purdue, I'm not going to say you're probably going to go out and be competitive against Ohio State. But that Wisconsin game, Wisconsin's struggling right now. They just lost to Northwestern. Northwestern, by the way, just the same record as everybody else now in that kind of 5-team swirl in the Big Ten West. They're 5-5 overall, 3-4 in the Big Ten, just like a bunch of other teams, including the Gophers. But that Wisconsin game now could be for bowl eligibility, could be like, Randy, we were talking before we started recording, and I've been musing about this already. Like, you could beat Nebraska, Iowa, and Wisconsin this year, and it would feel like a bad year. When would you ever think that was the case?
Yeah, that would be something. I always figured that the Gophers to make it to Indy for the Big Ten title game, they would need to beat both Iowa and Wisconsin in the same year, and there's a 50-50 chance that'll happen if they come through against Wisconsin. Then okay, yeah, they've got those 2 trophies, but they'll be sitting back here still.
Yeah, and I mean it still feels like there's some relevance to it, but I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what to I think they were in a similar spot a few years ago, right, where they had to beat Wisconsin to be bowl eligible. Yeah,
2018. They went out there. That's the year they fired Rob Smith, defense coordinator. Joe Rossi took over, turned around that defense really quick. They go on a run. They get it to 5-6. They go to Wisconsin and they beat the Badgers 30. I'm trying to remember the score, 35-6.
38-17 or something. I don't remember what it was. Something big, something pretty significant.
They beat them going away. They got a Demetrius Douglas punt return touchdown, which that's nice to see something on the special teams.
Right.
That in the return game, but they basically that kind of they end up going to the Quick Lane Bowl in Detroit and beat Georgia Tech. That kind of pushed them forward for the next year, and then they have the 11-2 year when they get on a roll during that season.
So obviously something still to play for here. What we've talked about bowl projections at various points. Like most of all the good ones, I would imagine, are kind of out of the picture now with these last couple losses. Where do they stand now? Let's say they are able to beat Wisconsin. What seems like a likely scenario if they're able to do that?
Yeah, they could, probably the high end, possibly Nashville. I think that's kind of unlikely. The low end, Detroit, and there's even a chance they would go to a different bowl game that's not in the Big Ten rotation if there are others. If the Big Ten has filled their allotment, the ones that's been mentioned are the Armed Forces Bowl in Fort Worth, Texas. I've seen the Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa.
You're just making them up now.
I've seen the Independence Bowl in Shreveport, things like that. It's just you have to wait and find out how many teams are eligible, where the open spots are, and see if they fit in there. And there is even a scenario they could go as a 5-7 team if there are certain numbers of open bowls and their APR is high enough. And that's a little down the road. I haven't ran all the numbers as to see exactly what they would have to do to get that. There's a lot of teams involved in there, but I think we all would hope that wouldn't come into play.
The Independence Bowl is no longer sponsored by the Weed Eater, is it? It's no longer.
It is not.
Okay, I didn't think so.
I don't have one off the top of my head. It's in Shreveport though.
Yes, it is. It is that. Last thing, Randy. Just kind of jumping to the Big Ten as a whole. Michigan gets maybe a little bit of slap on the wrist, maybe a little bit more than that. The 3-game, Jim Harbaugh can't coach on the sidelines. Not really a suspension, kind of a, he can't be there on the sidelines on game day, but he can kind of do everything else. He's gonna have say his piece in a few days here. What did you make of that temporary punishment, as it were, and where else do you think we can go from here?
Yeah, that's interesting. Michigan's going to pull out every legal stop that they can to get an injunction so he can continue to coach and get back in there. But I was glad to see that the Big Ten did something this year with it. Did something. They believed everything was cut and dried, that this did happen. Michigan wanted the whole process to play out with it. Well, of course they do. That punts it in the next year, and they end up, they could end up going to the national for the college football playoff and everything. So it's basically, I'm glad the Big Ten did at least what they did. It wouldn't have bothered me at all to see if they would have came down harder and maybe even said, "Hey, Michigan, this is egregious enough. We will not let you play in the conference title game. You can still get in the college football playoff. That's up to them. But your transgressions were enough to where you're not going to get to play for our title."
Well, we'll see if they are or not, right? It'll come down. I guess it'll still come down to the field against Ohio State, right?
Yep. It's them and Ohio State on the 25th.
Well, that should be a good game. I'd say 90% of America might be going for Ohio State in that one, except for maybe those who like secret sideline tapings and are maybe pro cheating. Well, Randy, appreciate it as always, unless, of course, Ohio State gets knocked off along the way by the Gophers. But I have a feeling that they won't be, even if they overlook the Gophers, they could be okay in that one on Saturday. We'll talk about it more next week, okay?
Okay, sounds good, Mike.
Always appreciate catching up with Randy. Always has good insights, even when the Gophers are playing poorly. I guess the bottom line for this season is, feels like a wasted opportunity, a missed opportunity. The West was so bad again, and this is the last year of it. And I don't know if it's just that the Gophers weren't that good this year or if they just played down to the level of that competition. But this year is disappointing, and I worry about the stalled momentum, where they go from here, because like we've talked about, this does not get any easier next year. The schedule is so much harder next year. If they put out this kind of product, this kind of effort, this kind of ability next year, they're going to be like 4-8, 5-7. They're not going to be very good next year if they play like this, because the schedule is just that much harder. The teams they're playing are that much better, and that is where you start to worry about. You start stacking up years like that, and that's where things start to backslide. So some important moments coming up for the Gophers, for PJ Fleck, in the not-too-distant future. Let's finish with the cooler. A couple things. Vikings, Jordan Hicks on injured reserve. I'm sure we'll talk about that a lot on the Access Vikings podcast later today. That's a huge blow to the defense. A lot of these injuries they've had to play through earlier this year were on the offense. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, quarterbacks, Madison, KJ Osborne, a lot of guys out at various points this season on the offense. Darisaw missed a game. But they've been relatively healthy on defense. The Marcus Davenport stuff is one thing, but they've been relatively healthy on defense. How do they overcome the loss of one of their veterans, one guy who was playing really well? How does that factor into the defense, which has been the better side of the ball for the better part of this season? That will be an interesting thing to watch over the next coming weeks while Hicks is out. Also, Twins, some procedural moves. Sonny Gray declined their qualifying offer. Not a surprise there. He will test free agency. Almost certainly will sign somewhere else, and the Twins will get a compensatory first-round pick in that case. Twins added a couple guys to their 40-man roster, including Austin Martin. That could be your backup or maybe your primary center fielder in 2024, depending on how the roster shakes out and the payroll shakes out. And some of that payroll is going to be determined by what their TV situation looks like. And again, like I teased, some stuff coming in bankruptcy court today. Phil Miller will join me on Thursday's show to talk through the Twins offseason in general, but also the latest proceedings there and how that impacts the Twins going forward as they sort out their local broadcast plan for 2024 and beyond. That will do it for me today. Thanks for joining Daily Delivery. I'm Michael Rand, back at it again tomorrow.